What if I told you that one organization funds everything from high school courses to AIPAC to Birthright trips, all the way to the IDF? And what if I told you they have an office in your city? Would you believe me? Folks, welcome back to The Narrative with me, your host, Vrillium, the host with the most and the most summer camp badges. I've been seeing a lot of talk online about AIPAC and J Street, all these other lobbying organizations, especially as the news and the narrative media starts to ramp itself up for the midterms. Obviously, it's a time in which people are running for office, when a lot of important seats are up for grabs in our government. At this specifically contentious time, a lot of people are starting to bring under fire lobbying organizations. And moreover, people are starting to bring up things like the connection between lobbying organizations and private donors. Because you might hear a lot in the coming months that AIPAC, J Street, the Israel lobby isn't actually the largest foreign lobby in America. And it's not. It's also technically not a foreign lobby. Something like AIPAC is technically Americans supporting Israel. It just so happens that a lot of those Americans hold dual citizenship to Israel and are Zionist Jews themselves, but on paper, that's not considered a foreign lobby. Easily the most insane loophole. I think we can all agree on that. But people are noting all these different super donors. I mean, you have the Adelsons themselves, who are the direct funders of both Netanyahu and Donald Trump's political career, a family that I would absolutely love to make a full-length video on. Honestly, they deserve a full-length video. But people are noting that, yeah, there's a certain character to these people. Someone like a Sheldon Adelson, who was not an Israeli citizen, let me make that very clear, did what he did, became the largest private funder of pro-Israel causes, both in America and Israel itself, despite having no real meaningful ties to Israel. No business ventures, no private for-profit property. Literally, there was no economic incentive nor political incentive for him to do this. He just did so solely from an ethnic affinity, solely because he believed in the cause of Israel, the cause of Zionism. And I'm happy to see people talk about this. I'm happy to see organizations like Track AIPAC and all these different condemnations of this sort of lobbying racket that has been established in our government and in our politics. I'm very happy to see that. Yet I've yet to see anybody comment on the root of these things. I've yet to see anybody comment on how these things connect to public everyday life. My biggest video so far on my channel was talking about Chabad. Now, Chabad, I obviously got more into their theology. I got more into their actual beliefs and sort of practices. But another thing Chabad does is a lot of political outreach, and it's a lot of community outreach, something that they do from a completely secular standpoint. And of course, the goal is to bring people into Chabad, but it's done so in a completely secular way. It legally has to be. What needs to be noted is that in that specific racket, Chabad is one of the smaller organizations. Today, I want to introduce you to the bigger ones. And all of this starts, oddly enough, at summer camp. Not a lot of people know this, but summer camp is like a fundamental part of Jewish culture. It's estimated that nearly 43% of Jews attend some form of Jewish summer camp. Mind you, that is attending some form of explicitly Jewish summer camp. There is no number that I could find on how many just attend summer camp, but I guarantee you it's probably somewhere in 80 to 90%. It is a very common question in their community to ask, where did you go to summer camp? Who do you know from summer camp? This is a very common part of their culture. And there's a reason for that. See, between 1880 and the 1920s, millions of Jewish immigrants from Eastern Europe came into the United States and very, very quickly coalesced in urban areas, the largest obviously being New York, the city with the largest population of them to this very day. Now, if you know anything about New York in the fucking early 20th century. Not exactly known for its spacious and green conditions. Most of them lived in tenements. The richest of them living in shoebox apartments. I mean, this is not a time in which building codes were very important. I mean, just go watch Gangs in New York. Very indicative of what life looked like. So very quickly, Jewish charities formed, and that wasn't odd. Most of the ethnic communities of New York City at that time started to form societies and charities, and they very quickly started promoting what they called fresh air camps. The idea being that young Jewish children would get sent out for some fresh air, usually somewhere in upstate New York, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, really anywhere on the East Coast that had a lot of open green space. This is where the fundamental Jewish summer camp comes from. These camps would usually also emphasize Jewish culture. The biggest sponsor of early camps being the YMHA. Yes, you heard me correctly, YMHA, like YMCA. Not as much of a catchy ring to it as the Village People song. I'm just saying. The Young Man's Hebrew Association. It was founded basically as a mirror copy of the YMCA. Very quickly, these camps, which were enjoyed by hundreds of thousands of Jewish children, very quickly became political. The first instance of this was with a program called Young Judea. Young Judea specifically created several of these camps with the goal in mind of the resettling of Ottoman and then British Palestine. They were explicitly Zionist camps that taught labor Zionism. Actually, some of the earliest kibbutzim, socialist communities of Israel that would later go on to create the Israeli state, many of them were organized at Young Judea camps. Now, this exists well into today. Young Judea itself exists well into today. And anybody who's been to these summer camps can tell you all about it. Now, you may be asking yourself, how do I, Vrilliam, Will Sexton, whatever you want to call me, very clearly a Gentile, how do I know about all this? Well, I attended one. Yes, I know. Hold on. Yes, I attended one. See, a lot of these summer camps, they're secular. This is because roughly half the Jews living in America are secular. The summer camp culture still lives on with these people, but instead they send their kids to secular camps. You can't create a Jewish ethnic camp. That's not allowed. So I, being the child of two working professional parents and overall a mischievous young man, was sent to summer camp. It was something to do during the summer. I was a kid, and if left to my own devices, I would have gotten myself into a lot of trouble. But from ages 12 to 15, yeah, I attended one of these summer camps. It was a completely secular camp. It's, again, illegal for them to say that I couldn't go on an ethnic basis. And if you pay the money, they'll let you go. It just so happened to be that I was like the one Gentile there. It was like me and the counselors were the only Gentiles there. Everyone else was Jewish, something that my parents did not know and I did not know until I got there, which 12-year-old me figured out very quickly. Wait a minute, why are all the men here named Zachary and Joshua, and why are all the women called Rebecca? And I am absolutely fucking sure that all the guys I went to summer camp with are going to see this video. Remember that photo I just showed you? Me, 14. God, look at that haircut. And I wish I could still be that skinny. All of the guys in that photo, blacked out faces, all of them, I shit you not, all of them went on to become either lobbyists, settlers, institutional players, or straight up IDF soldiers. All of them. Like, I'm not kidding. And this is a common thread amongst all these summer camps. The only reason I didn't follow in their footsteps is because obviously I am a Gentile, I'm not Jewish. It was very quickly towards the end of summer camp that I began to realize there's a pipeline. I very explicitly remember being 15, summer camp nearing an end, and having people promote things like Hillel and Birthright. It was sort of a de facto policy that Birthright came after summer camp, that you would do summer camp, then you'd spend a summer sort of interning, trying to get ready for college, and once you were 18 to 22, you went on Birthright. And this was the standard thing. The guys who I went to summer camp with all went on Birthright as a group. And this is standard practice across the country. And mind you, I went to a secular camp. Like, I can only imagine what it was like for actual specifically Jewish camps. It's probably like way crazier, like way more promoted. And so it begs the question, like, is there a pipeline? And the definitive answer is yes, there absolutely is. They are starting this very, very young, and it's a pipeline that goes across their entire lifetime. After the summer camp, what's next? Birthright is a quintessential young American Jewish experience that you might have heard of. It's a 10-day free trip for Jews age 18 to 26 to Israel, hence the name Birthright. They say it's the birthright of all young Jewish people to be able to go and see the motherland. It's funded almost entirely by private organizations and private donors, in direct cooperation with the Israeli government, as well as the Jewish Agency for Israel and the Jewish Federations of North America. The program is, as I said before, a free 10-day trip. So what is it? What do they have them do? It's not explicitly religious. There's obviously kind of a religious aspect to it. You are going to the Holy Land, but what do they actually do for 10 days? Well, it's sex tourism. Oh, I'm really riding a dangerous line with this one. Yes, it's basically sex tourism. Like, several high-profile articles have been written about how Birthright is basically birthing right. And it makes sense. 18 to 26 years old, they put these kids usually with people from the IDF who are around their age and promote getting them to fuck. They take them to raves and parties, most notably in the more liberal city of Tel Aviv, and give lots of alone time for our young Jewish travelers. It is incredibly common for Jewish people to have met their partner, who they will go on to marry, on Birthright, whether they be an Israeli citizen or two Americans who just happen to be on the same Birthright group. Funny enough, this is the story of how one Ethan Klein met Hillel Klein. You know, H3H3, remember them? Yeah. That's how they met. Hillel Klein was the IDF soldier assigned to escort Ethan Klein's group. And this is a very common story. And so you may be asking, why is that? Did Sheldon Adelson have like a breeding kink? I don't know, but that's not the reason. The reason is to promote something called Aliyah. Aliyah, which literally means ascent, is the Hebrew word used for Jewish immigration into Israel. That's all it means. This is the first place where people can get out of this pipeline. Very common that you'll have an American Jew meet an Israeli Jew, and then the American Jew moves to Israel. Again, that's actually literally what Ethan Klein did. And they fund this. The Jewish Federations of North America, as well as these other organizations, they directly fund that. There are several programs, both within America and Israel, that will actually pay young Jews to do this. Like, they'll get them a place to live, they'll get them a job, they'll give them money to start them off in this new life. But for those who don't find love, or maybe just choose not to get off at that point, the pipeline continues. The next stop on this pipeline is Hillel. Hillel is the first instance of this pipeline being part of your life. Now, I'm saying Hillel, not Halal. Hillel is the largest Jewish student organization in the world, bar none. Basically, every college or university in America has a Hillel. I myself went to Montclair State University, a school with a less than 1% Jewish population. Like, Montclair State is not known for its Jewish community, and they had a Hillel. Now, like, on their website and very publicly, they say, oh, well, we are an organization for Jewish students to meet one another and to have access to kosher food and yada, yada, yada. But it's a lot more than that. Hillel organizes birthright trips. They organize Jewish fraternities. They specifically organize alumni meetings, job boards, so young Jews can join and instantly become part of a grander network. Again, it's funded almost directly by the Jewish Federations of North America, as well as private donors. Another thing that Hillel does, interestingly enough, is hold internships. You know, internships, very covetous thing when you're in college. I remember being in college and scrambling for internships. It was what everyone did. And you'd meet some people who had the illustrious paid internship. But Hillel's internships, though, are interesting, to say the least. Hillel directly offers internships in public affairs, public interests, and public relations with organizations like AIPAC and J Street. Yes, they offer lobbying internships. They will take young Jews in Hillel and directly send them over the summer to Washington, D.C. to go intern, not only with lobbying organizations, but with politicians. It is completely normal in our Congress and Senate for politicians during the summer to have interns with them from Hillel, who They're like watching the process being them getting lobbying money for and from the state of Israel. I shit you not. And so this is the second stop on the pipeline. They are directly preparing and grooming kids for a career beyond college, many times directly within lobbying. You wonder where AIPAC gets all these dedicated people who are okay with going into our government and effectively strong-arming and bribing our public officials to do their bidding. This is where they get them in this pipeline where they're already whipped up on this manufactured patriotism for a foreign country and then let them loose on Washington, D.C. But what about those who aren't interested in lobbying? I mean, there's not a lot of money in lobbying. They certainly find a way to be paid well, but it's not nearly as illustrious as some of the other positions and jobs and high life scenes of the American Jewish community. Well, all of this takes us to our final stop on the pipeline. There's a little 4-letter organization that I've been saying throughout this entire video for every single step of the way. Did you notice it? Did you catch it as we've been going through this journey? The JFNA, the Jewish Federations of North America. The JFNA, the JIFNA, has a location in your city. Every single American city has an office, and they handle every single part of this pipeline. They directly fund the summer camps, they fund Birthright, they fund Hillel, and are directly responsible for overseeing all of this. And, most notably, they are directly responsible for funneling young Jews into non-government positions in places like Wall Street or top law firms. They're responsible for setting up interest-free loans, setting up Aliyah into Israel, all these different things. And they are directly responsible for the operations and staffing of both AIPAC and J Street, the two largest Israeli lobbying organizations in America. So much so that one of their most famous programs are something called fly-ins, where, like I said before, they will fly these kids to DC, introduce them to their congressman, and facilitate an internship with them, and then facilitate them getting the job. Remember when Tucker Carlson very famously talked with one Thomas Massey about how every congressman and senator had an AIPAC guy? This is where they come from. They come from the Jewish Federations of North America. This is where the AIPAC guys are created, is in this fucking organization. An organization that facilitated the journey of these people all the way from summer camp into your congressman's office. And so this is the grand finale of the pipeline. This is what everything is leading to. We wonder how these gigantic donor and lobbying networks were created. It's through this pipeline. Summer camp, Birthright, Hillel, federations. This is the pipeline that exists in our country and exists solely on our coast. Something that I myself realized very, very early on. People ask me constantly, how did I get to where I am politically? People are constantly asking me, where am I politically? Am I some kind of radical leftist? Am I some kind of white nationalist? To every assumption, I say, no, I'm simply me. And I'm simply a patriot and simply a truth teller. And I feel I've always been that way. My politics have evolved over time, but this is something I recognized very, very early on because I always knew I was an other. Remember how I said before that I knew I wasn't going to go on Birthright with them? That was probably the first time I realized that there is a separate world that lives within our world. There's a separate nation that lives within our nation. See, all the kids that I went to summer camp with came from Westchester. They lived in the suburbs of Westchester. This is incredibly common. And at other camps, the kids came from other hubs where these people live, whether it be Boca Raton, Florida, Los Angeles. You realize very early on, a lot of them know each other and their lives are set for them. Like, when I met these kids, their lives were set for them. I remember age 15, I'm an incoming sophomore in high school, and the conversation of college starts to come up. All of them knew they were going to the Ivy League. All of them. And if not the Ivy League, if they really were an underachiever amongst them, they still were going to go to a very, very, very good state school. something like SUNY Binghamton. And this was just the norm. And they knew that there was a career waiting for them in one of these fields. And they were just well aware of that. And they came from the absolute lap of luxury. Now, it's not a secret that I come from a very, very wealthy family, something that is a huge blessing, thank God for. But the kids I went to summer camp with dwarfed that. Dwarfed it. I remember going to their houses when I was a kid and feeling poor. Most notably, one of the kids I hung out with the most lived next to the Clintons, shared a fence with the Clintons. They lived in a completely detached world. And so you wonder where this culture comes from, this culture of supremacy, this culture of differentness, of otherness, how something like an Epstein could happen. And it comes from this pipeline. It comes from this nation that's been created. They're completely separate from the rest of us. And really, I'd argue it's not their fault. In some ways, I honestly kind of feel bad for them. They had no choice in the matter. And some of the best, most patriotic Jews I know, who I would not consider in any capacity my enemy or my opposition, they're the ones that had to interact with us publicly. And by us, I mean the Gentiles, the rest of America. And it's in doing that they see our humanity, that they see us as people, and they recognize us as people. But I completely understand how if I lived in a nation completely separate from the rest of the country, where I lived in complete wealth with my whole life planned for me, where at absolutely no point I was unsure that I was going to make a fuck ton of money, I too would probably look at the rest of the American public who watches shit like The Big Bang Theory and The Masked Singer and would look down on them as lesser than me. I understand where that mindset comes from. I think we can all agree. And this is the problem. See, people have asked me what is my political position? Who am I as an individual? And I very simply put, I'm an American. I believe in the dream of America. I really do. See, I come from a WASP family. Granted, my family wasn't Protestant, but that's a whole other story. But a heritage American, you could call me. An American ethnic group that Jews have historically had really good relations with and want to be a part of, intermarry into constantly. Something which, by the way, I was offered. Some of my first ex-girlfriends come from this group. Young women who I'm sure will see this video. So how you guys doing? Crazy how things turn out, right? But it's from that I truly believe in America. But America only works if we have oneness, if we understand ourselves to be America. And the problem is that everywhere across the country, we have tribalism. People look at my condemnations of things like Indian ethnic favoritism or Somali scams or this de facto supremacy that is formed in this community, and they think of me as some kind of hateful guy. I'm really not. The simple fact is I want an America where we're American. That was the idea, that was the dream. There's a reason why you don't call me an Anglo-American or an English American. This was specifically rallied against when America was founded. Our founding fathers expressly and explicitly called themselves American because they believed in America. They believed in the idea that we could be better than the old world, that we could create something new. And this is the defining feature of my politics, is I don't want the struggles of the old world. And tribalism, supremacy, otherness, this comes from the old world. This is an old world thing that has been introduced into our society, and it's killing us. It's killing us. What I haven't mentioned up until now is the fact that the Jewish Federations of North America, one of their explicit and express goals upon their founding was to be against Americanness, against assimilation. They saw that young Jews were beginning to assimilate into America. They were becoming American. And that is something they were expressly against. It's organizations like the Jewish Federations of North America and others that create this separate nation living within our own. And two nations can't live in one. One will always come out on top and will inevitably subjugate the other. And this is where we are. I was told since I was a kid that white supremacy was a problem in this country, that there existed people who believed that the fact that they were white made them better than everyone else and made them an other from everyone else. And I was told that this sickness of society was found in our highest institutions, and that this disadvantaged everyone else. And it wasn't fair. It wasn't just. And I think we all want to be fair and we all want to be just. That's what we want in a fair and prosperous nation. But I grew up and quickly saw I wasn't allowed to ask a very simple question. If white supremacy exists, if this is a thing that exists, if this is an institutional thing that exists that has institutional actors and organizations and funding, first off, where can I get some of these funds? I'm just listen, I have rent due relatively soon, okay? Listen. No, but in all seriousness, if that exists, aren't other groups also capable of that? Like, aren't other groups capable of doing that? Don't they have the capacity to do that? And wouldn't like a highly educated, very, very wealthy group not only have the capacity to do that, but like the very clear sheer ability to do that? And I wasn't allowed to ask that. And so it begs the question, if white supremacy is the dominant of our society, why am I allowed to talk to you about it? Why am I allowed to sit here and talk to you about the concept of white supremacy and have that conversation and have the conversation about how it's a bad thing? Why am I allowed to do that? Meanwhile, if I was to claim that these people, that this pipeline was a very clear example of their own supremacist community, that someone like Sheldon Adelson is very clearly a supremacist for his own, well, I can't do that. That's not allowed. That's something that I haven't been allowed to do up until very, very recently as these conversations begin to spawn. Well, I think that definitively proves a point here that yes, there is a supremacy in our society. It's just not exactly white. Because like I said, I was a kid. I was white and I wasn't allowed in this pipeline. And so maybe that's where my politics started. Maybe that's where I realized that I'm an American, when I had to spend time in a place that didn't feel American, that felt unfair, that felt unjust, a place of otherness where I was the other, not by virtue of sheer number, not by virtue of history, but by virtue of choice. Every bar mitzvah, every campfire. You ask me what my politics are, you ask me who I am. Well, I'm everything that this isn't. I'm everything that's against this. And really, I'm everything that's for you. Folks, that is going to do it for us today on this episode of The Narrative. I hope you enjoyed. Guys, I want to take a second to give a quick thank you for 50,000 subscribers. My God, I'm so blessed. Really, words can't express my gratitude, guys. And moreover, I'm so blessed that what I've created here is a community of all different kinds of people, from the farthest right to the farthest left. It seems I've created a community here of people who are fed up with the status quo in American politics. And I can imagine whatever's going to be said about me is going to be said, that I'm this, that, and the other. But really, truthfully, I'm just thankful. I'm grateful for all of you. As we enter these midterms, stay aware of what's going on around you. Ask yourself where information is coming from. Question everything. Question me if you need to. And remember that the American flag, it means something much, much greater than us. With all of that in mind, I say very simply, once again, but with a special meaning today, God bless you and God bless America. Until next time, folks.